As a young man, having grown up in Gen Z, it's time we have a talk. Let's take a wide look at this timeline that we've been through. And if you are not a young man from Gen Z, at the very least, this video will help you fully understand young men of the modern era. Absolutely, without a doubt. But let's start from the beginning. Pre-teens, things were still relatively normal. Socializing as a kid, all you really had technology-wise was an iPod where you just plug in music and you'd be running around, recess, fun vibes. Things were still fully relatively normal. Technology was still in its early infancy in many ways when it came to the modern world. And things started to advance, By the time we were early teens, the world had changed. In a way that many people will say it's obvious, social media. What most people don't know changed the world for my generation was Snapchat. The birth of an app with a ghost on it that slowly destroyed social interaction. And I'll explain this to you. Now I say slowly, but back in the 1980s, in early years of teens, if you saw a cute girl you wanted to talk to, you had to go up and say something. But all of a sudden, it became completely normalized to just take your phone and send a picture of your face. It created an illusion that you're having social interactions when in actuality you're having none. Now that being said, most of us were still relatively social, but for the people like me who had a hint of antisocial or a hint of overthinking, this app created a gateway to be able to escape the actual confronting pressure of going up and talking to girls and just be able to have streaks. It became so normalized that if you didn't have a certain number of streaks, you were almost viewed like a social ostrich, which is crazy. And as you already know, as the birth of this app continues to rise, our timeline goes on. Now, as we're getting into our mid-teens, natural feelings of lust, desire start to bubble up, just like every generation before, but one thing has changed. And I'll speak on this from my experience, because I still remember early on in high school years, there being a shift from going to the supermarket and seeing a Kate Upton magazine to what would come after the rise of the porn industry, the way that it rose. And worst of all, it was being told to be normal. Our health classes would proclaim masturbation. Oh, it's normal, it's healthy actually. And it became a commonplace norm. And when you tell a young man that something is normal and all your other friends are doing it and it's all this untalked about behind the scenes type of thing, what do you think happens to a group of young men? Do you think that they would be responsible with their desires and such deep-rooted biological feelings? Or do you think a sea of depravity would arise? You already know what happened if you're a man from Gen Z. But that being said, a common excuse would arise from older generations, old heads saying, the reason why we claim it's normal is, we had Playboy magazines, it's all normal. Well, Playboy magazines don't hold a fucking candle to the demonic industry that arose throughout our childhood. But that being said, I'm not gonna get into too much cope. Let's continue the timeline, because still, going into late high school years, there was still a semblance of normalcy. As someone who was an anxiety-ridden overthinker, I still played sports, had my group of friends, and even though these two problems that I've already talked about continued to arise, and were certainly behind the scenes, still relative social life. I had my first little thing with a girl, and for a lot of guys, life was still relatively normal. And then all of a sudden, the world shut down. The government said, nah, you're not going outside. We're gonna take a year of just inside, masks, and that affected the whole world. But the reason why it's different for my generation of young men, for Gen Z, is because of everything I just talked about. The perfect recipe of lack of social skills and distractions were slowly arising and getting exponentially worse. And then we got a test where it's a year of just being in your house. The gates were opened up for all of these things. And for a lot of young men, it became an exponential problem overnight. And nobody seems to talk about it. So I'm glad that I'm here speaking to the camera, because I know there's some guys behind the scenes that can really relate to this. Because I'm willing to admit, I was not perfect in that time. One of the biggest reasons why I'm so passionate about this channel is because I was down bad in 2020. When the world shut down, I gave into so many bad habits, and a lot of people said, well, I actually maximized 2020 and I had used all this free time to create blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't, and I know a lot of other young guys didn't. But you know what? We're here right now. And also during that time became the birth of one of the greatest opportunities. Now, let's go a little bit further on to 2020, 2021. It really did birth in this pandemic, but the birth of TikTok, many people will view this on the timeline as one of the most distracting genesises of social media ever. And I'm not gonna argue that. Social media went from what was once you had to open something up and look at it and watch something, and then you'd have to exit it and then re-enter to watch something, to literally just a stream of just nonstop dopamine. And it's crazy that this is the accurate description of what it became. But that being said, now I want to get into the opportunity of this timeline of the young men of Gen Z, because what came from that, which so many people don't talk about, is in the 1980s, in order to get fame, or a better word is notoriety, where thousands of people know your name and want to buy things from you simply because of who you are, you had to be an actor, you had to be an athlete, you had to spend years, if not decades, crafting a very niche skill and be one of the best in the world just to have a chance at it. And ever since 2020, with the birth of the For You page and discoverability, things changed. You no longer need to go through all of that. There are random kids posting stupid videos about nonsense things that are getting more infamy than people who spent years of their life back then building up a niche skill set. Times have changed. The floodgates of reach have now opened, and that is an exceptional opportunity. An opportunity that a lot of people don't seem to look at all. But that being said, let's go on. This is early 2020, 2021. And right after the world shut down and reopened, was there ever a conversation about any of the things that I just talked about? Was there ever anyone talking about reassimilating as a young man? Maybe some young men struggling with different things? Not even in the slightest. And so as I go on and on, I don't want to make this whole video cope. I want to talk about the opportunity that's arisen. Because I've broken down everything when it comes to our timeline. And everything that I've just talked about, it has all continued to slowly get worse all the way up to where we are now. But you could focus on all the problems. You could focus on all the reasons why you're more anxious, or you're more this, or you're more that. The reality is, there has never in the history of mankind been more opportunity than there is right now in 2025. And the reason for this, and it'll be the same thing in 2026 if this is when you're watching this video, the reason is because of what I talked about in 2020, but so many other things as well. The birth of reach has given you abilities to craft new businesses, get reach to new people, thousands of them. In the 1980s, if you wanted to start a business, you had to invest so much in inventory. You had to put so much risk out there. And in order to even reach people, you had to spend even more on marketing. Nowadays, with the birth of organic reach, there are ways that you could do affiliate marketing. There are ways that you can just, by simply making videos on these social media apps, get thousands of people to view your business, to view your service, to view your product in a way that did not exist. Literally before 2019, it did not exist, which is crazy. And the opportunity goes on. AI has shattered the knowledge gap. What once would take a coder 10 years to learn, you can learn in 20 minutes on a YouTube video. All the knowledge is out there. Everything is for the taking. But the reason why so many young men don't do it still confuses me, but I want to say I understand. So many young men are still refusing to look outside the traditional path. And as someone who's now in this social media game, when you're inside of it, it looks like everybody else is starting businesses and doing all these things. And especially when you're on these social media apps and you're scrolling, it seems like everybody's doing it. But when we take a wide look, when we look at the macro, personally, not a single other person I know from my entire high school is doing anything outside of the traditional norm. And it's pretty much the same for college as well. It's so rare, and that is the opportunity. It's important to understand that majority of young men in our generation are following the traditional path that worked in the 1980s. With everything I've just laid out, do you think that that's the safe way to go about things? They think it's the safest path. I would argue otherwise, but that's not for this video. For right now, I want to give you the hope, because the biggest hope that I want you to hold from everything that I've talked about is distraction and focus is the most underrated, non-talked about, valuable skill that will either break men or build them. Because There have never been more distractions than ever before. You look at a social media algorithm, one person will be swiping and they'll be spiraling into distractions, lust, these terrible negative things, and the spiral is downwards. But another person will look on social media and they'll get motivation, they'll get personal development, they'll get business ideas, and they'll spiral upwards. The algorithms quite literally feed your best and worst inhibitions. And more important than that, the lost art of focus. It is an art of my generation which has been slowly eroded throughout everything that I've discussed. Your ability to just sit down, read a book, the fact if you've watched this far into the video and you're still sitting and watching, you would be amazed at when you go on social media too much, you get this urge to just hop off videos. And it's almost like you need to really love the creator you're watching to really watch a full video. Distraction has never been worse. And as a result, focus has never been more of an opportunity. So many people go through their automated bot life lifestyle of doing a job that they hate, doing some basic menial work that requires minimal focus at best, and then with all of their free time, it's dopamine, distractions, this, they can't focus on shit. So what I'm telling you is practicing focus might seem corny, it might seem stupid, but it is one of the biggest opportunities because with focus, you can build anything. You can truly build anything. It is my mission to give you a channel that gives you the hope, inspiration, mindset as a young man to win in this world. Because in 2020, I was absolutely broken. I'll be vulnerable. I was shattered. I had no social skills. I had no ability to focus. I was so distracted. I was negative. I was spiraling in the worst ways on the internet. And I was giving into these vices and addictions and all. I was so broken. And brick by brick, I've built my physique. I've built my mindset. I've built my financial freedom. And all I want on this channel is to help guide you along the journey and give you everything that I know. And as I continue to grow, I will give you so much more. Unlike every other fucking influencer out there, my course right now is completely free. It's just everything I know from fitness, mindset, so much, thousands of dollars of valuable information. Flat out, it's free. It's linked in the description if you want to check it out. For the first 1,000 members, it will be free. And I'm never gonna lie to you guys. I'm never gonna rug pull you guys. I'm here to see you win. So if you're interested in a channel that cares so much about you as a young man, subscribe. But regardless, get after it. Stay blessed. I believe in you.